Hi everyone, welcome to the SI2 webinar on root causes. This webinar is for schools participating in ASA School Improvement Institute. So here's the topics that we'll cover today, and we do have a very full agenda and we are going to try to finish on time. So we have a few updates to go over with you. Then, as always, we'll quickly review the organizational structure and the improvement process. We do that every month just to kind of show you where this month's activities fit into the big picture. And then today we're talking about root causes. So we'll do an introduction. We'll help you understand all of the root cause data that you're going to be looking at, which is fascinating data. And then we'll kind of overview the root cause discussions for you. Okay, so a couple of updates. First of all, we will be conducting an SI2 intro webinar for any new principals that may be in your school or new steering team members. So if you've had a new steering team member move to another school or retire or just need a break and somebody else is coming in to take that person's place, please make sure that they participate in this webinar, as well as if you have new principals, a new principal, make sure that that principal participates. Basically what we're going to do is just go over the SI2 process, the SI2 terminology. We'll help the new steering team members understand how we distribute tasks. So it would be nice if the new member knew what their point position was on the steering team before they came to the webinar. The webinar will be August 18th. We will send you an email tomorrow that gives you a registration link. So please make sure that any new people that you have, or just anybody that you would like to kind of have an intro to SI2, that they register for that webinar. So August 18th at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Okay, one quick terminology change, and this really does not impact you at all, but it's going to look different when you go to the online system, so we just wanted to point it out. We used to call the different years in SI2 year 1, year 2, year 3, and we decided to change that a little bit. So when schools start with SI2, we're going to call those schools now startup schools. So all the schools that are listening to this webinar, you are all startup schools. Then after your startup year, where you're creating everything for the first time, then the second year that you'll work with us, we just do updates to your school improvement plan, and we'll call you an Update 1 school. And then the next year you'll be an Update 2 school, and we'll just do updates again. And then the third year after that, the third year is the Update 3 schools. And in that year, we will redo the surveys and all the root cause data. We only do that every 3 years. Because we know it's so time consuming. So you'll do that as a startup school. You're doing all of your surveys, and then we'll do updates the next 2 years. We'll look at new achievement data, but we won't redo the root cause data. And then in the third year we look at all new data. So yeah, so just wanted to give you a little bit of heads up on that, so that when we start referring to you as a startup school, or you see that in our website, you'll know what we're talking about. Then the other thing we wanted to bring to your attention that's brand new, this week the Department of Education sent a memo to superintendents and principals, and so I'm not sure if all principals are aware of this yet. We talked with several yesterday that didn't have this memo was not on their radar. But there's a couple things in here that really impact our work with you. One is that DOE has now published a deadline for the school improvement plan and the student achievement plan. So that deadline is October 1st, which is 2 weeks before when we thought it was going to be. So that's going to change our timeline a little bit with our work with you. And I'll talk more about that in a sec. And then the other thing in this memo is that it gives instructions for how to submit the school improvement plan, which is you'll just simply upload it using DOE Online. And then on the student achievement plan, which only focus and priority schools have to do, you will email your student achievement plan to your DOE outreach coordinator. So this actually is incredibly simple for SI2 schools to do. And just to give you kind of a look ahead, when your work with us is complete, your process page in the online system will look like this. After everything meets criteria and we know that you've met all the requirements for PL 221, you'll get balloons at the top of your process page, and that means, woohoo, let's celebrate because everything's finished and everything meets criteria. So what I wanted to show you is that when those balloons appear, you can scroll all the way down to the bottom of the process page, and there's this little section about submitting your work to DOE. So after all your work is finished, you just click this button and that will download a PDF version of your school improvement plan. So you don't have to worry about formatting anything or typing any reports. You just click that button and it will pop out. So, and then in this next row, if you click this, it'll take you to DOE Online, and you'll just take that PDF and you'll upload it to DOE. So the whole thing takes, just a couple minutes. So it's very, very simple. So when, I'm going to go back to that memo, when you all get this memo in your schools, don't worry about it. We've got it covered. So, and just know that it's going to be very, very easy. All you're going to do is download the SIP, the school improvement plan from DOE, or I'm sorry, from our system, and then upload it to DOE. Okay, and then same thing with the student achievement plan. So all of your this is again only for focus and priority schools. And what it is basically your school improvement plan in a different format, because we make sure that you include all of your SAP interventions in your school improvement plan. This is a universal school improvement plan. But DOE has a format that they want you to use. So what the system does is it takes all the pertinent information out of your school improvement plan, it puts it into the student achievement plan format, and then you click this button and it downloads. So this, our focus and priority schools have told us that they absolutely love this. It's such a time saver because we have filled out DOE's template for you. So again, if you're focus or priority school, you'll need to upload the SIP to DOE, but then you'll also need to download the SAP and then send it as an email attachment to your DOE outreach coordinator. When you click on this button, it brings up DOE's website that lists all of the DOE outreach coordinators and the counties that they serve and their email addresses. So again, this takes a couple of minutes. You just click this button, download it, and then send it as an email attachment. So when it comes to submitting to DOE, this is easy peasy. I mean, it's just download and submit. So we've done all the formatting and all the reporting for you based on what you've put into the system. Okay, so wanted to give you that, and again, so don't worry when you get this email from DOE. You've got it covered with your work with SI2. You'll just download and submit. Okay, that said, let's go on then. Because the DOE, because the timeline, the deadline for the SIP and SAP was a little sooner than anyone expected it to be, we've had to make some adjustments in our calendar with you. So I want to go through this with you. So there's 3 steps that we need to do this in the next couple months: root causes, interventions, and preparation. Nothing is going to change in root causes. We want you to have the full 2 weeks that you need to paw through all that root cause data and to submit your root causes to us. So nothing has changed with root causes. Then in interventions, nothing has changed there. So again, after we know what your root causes are, we want you to have the full time, a couple weeks, to really be looking at researching the right interventions based on your root causes and to get those to us. Now, in preparation, this is where we're going to condense our timeline a little bit, kind of. And I'm going to show you a way you can do this that will not be condensed. So on preparation, instead of having a webinar, we're just going to put up a video that you can watch anytime. That means that if you were to finish interventions early, you can go right on to preparation without having to wait for the webinar. So some schools will nail these interventions. They do it really well the first time. They've thought everything through quickly, and they'll have everything approved right away. Theoretically, if you send your interventions to us August 23rd, you could have them approved by August 25th. So, and then if immediately you watch this video, you could get started on preparation. So we would like, though, at the very least, to get those interventions to us by September 2nd. That's not a new deadline. That's a deadline we've always given you. And then right away, watch this video on how to do preparations. So again, the only change is as soon as as soon as you have your interventions approved, you're going to go right on the preparation. You're not going to wait for a webinar. So then we did move up the preparation due date by I think about a week. We need time to review those preparations, and we want to get all of our review finished so that you can upload your SIP and SAP to DOE on September 29th so you can meet that October 1st deadline. So I know in Plymouth, y'all have talked with us about, can we postpone this deadline? Can we have more time here? And all along we've said, no, that's not really going to work, and this is why. We thought we were going to have to October 15th. The deadline from DOE that was announced this week is a little sooner even than we thought. So we just have to make sure that everybody's staying on task so that we can get all this finished. So one other little part here, since we're doing the preparation training as a video and not as a webinar, that means that this September 22nd webinar is no longer going to happen. We're replacing that webinar with the video. So, and that video will be ready on, right away on on August 22nd. As soon as we have done this webinar, we're going to post this video. So, okay, if you have questions about that timeline, talk with Tina. She'd be happy to walk through it with you. We know it's tight, and again, this is happening because DOE's last deadline for the SIP wasn't until March 1st, so we couldn't start working with schools till March 2nd, and now we have between March 2nd and October 1st to do a process that we normally spend a full 9 months on. So. And then I can guarantee you that as a Update 1 school, when you're, have finished this year and you're going on to the next year, at that point, unless DOE changes any of their deadlines, we'll be able to go back to our normal schedule, which is where schools do 1 step a month and everything's it's very manageable. So we know that this is a time crunch, and I wish that deadline had been postponed since schools couldn't start working on their new plan until after March 1st. But it is what it is, and we're all going to just pitch in and make the best of it. So, okay, quick review. So just reviewing organizational structure, remember that you have a steering team. Your steering team are the worker bees. That's the steering team members that are listening to the webinar today. So these are the worker bees, and they have different tasks that you've been doing. So just as a reminder, because of the shortened timeline this year, we have not gathered input from your student body, nor have we gathered input from a broadly based improvement council. So, but in our work with you next year, we will definitely do that. So, okay, process. Remember that we started with you by just getting organized, and we've done that. We did an intro in April. You created your vision statement in May. In June, you did your goals, and so you're coming into this meeting with your primary areas for improvement, or your broad goals, defined, and then also your very specific SMART goals. So if your school, there's a few schools that are running a little bit behind and they haven't submitted that yet, we have to have SMART goals done before we can go on to the next step, because root causes are targeting your SMART goals, and if we don't have SMART goals, we don't know what to target. So, so if you're one of those handful of schools that has not submitted yet your SMART goals, we really need to jump on that like ASAP and get those SMART goals to us so we can approve them so you can go on with the process. Okay, so today, before today, these are the products that we have so far. These are the components of your school improvement plan that are already finished. And the last one that we did was number 7 there, the achievement goals, so SMART goals especially. Okay, they were due June 20th. Okay, so today we're going to talk about root causes. This is the most important step, we believe, because it's what helps us understand why students aren't achieving in the areas of your SMART goals. So we're going to help you look at all different kinds of areas that are common reasons why kids don't achieve in schools. It's based on our experience of 20 years of working with SI2 schools, as we start to see when schools are high achieving schools, the things that they have in common, as well as literature research. So we're going to help you look at data that shows that the degree to which your school and your students and your community have things in place that are necessary for student achievement to go up. And we're going to focus that discussion on each of your SMART goals. So this step, there's a ton of data. It's fascinating data, but it's really, really an important step in the process. Then, when we talk with you again at the end of the month, we'll know what the problems are. We'll know what your root causes are. And then we're going to start talking about how we're going to fix those. If one of your root causes is that students don't have extra help available to them, how are you going to fix that? If one of the root causes is that students aren't engaged in instruction, or teachers aren't using classroom assessments to inform their instructional decisions, how do we fix those things? So we'll talk about interventions at the end of the month. That'll be after your root causes are finished. And then finally, the top of the screen says September 22nd, but remember this is going to happen as soon as interventions are done. The last step is preparation. So we're going to take these interventions and we're going to talk about what do we need to do to make sure those interventions are implemented well across the board and with integrity. That's really important. We have so many, used to have a lot of schools before we included this step. We had a lot of schools that had great plans on paper, but the interventions never got rolling. So the last step is going to be preparation. We'll talk about professional development for those interventions. We'll come up with an annual calendar, and then if there's resources needed to implement those interventions, like time or funding or whatever it is. Okay, so that's the process, and now let's jump into root causes. Tina, I'm going to ask you real quickly, are there any comments or questions?
None yet.
None yet. Okay, very good. Okay, so now new content. Here we go. So root causes. Here's the definition. Root causes are the things that get in the way of achievement. Okay? They answer the question, why aren't more students reaching our academic goals? So this is the why. Why aren't our kids mastering ratios in 7th grade? Why aren't our kids passing the Algebra 1 end of course assessment? Why aren't our kids reading at grade level? So this is the why question. And again, our interventions are going to then target and tackle these whys. So this is incredibly important, the next two slides. Root causes may be general things. And by general, I mean that it's a root cause that's going to impact every subject, every course, and every standard. For example, poor attendance. If a student has poor attendance, that's going to impact everything, all that student's coursework. If you have a school that doesn't have sound discipline, that's going to impact all subjects. So root causes can be general. What we find is that a lot of schools will only put in general root causes. And what we have found over the years is that that's not enough. If the only thing that you impact is attendance and discipline, I mean, that's going to help, but it's not enough. So in addition to general root causes that impact everything in the school, we will also be working with you to identify specific root causes. So a specific root cause is a root cause that will impact a specific subject, a specific course, or a specific standard. For example, let's say that one of our SMART goals was to increase the percentage of students who master ratios. And so as we're looking at why aren't kids mastering ratios, we discover that nobody's teaching ratios, so lessons on ratios are absent in 7th grade. Well, there's a specific root cause. That's not going to impact language arts, it's not going to impact science or social studies, but it certainly is going to impact the mastery of that standard in math. So it's a specific root cause. Maybe everybody in the building is using instructional practices that engage all students, except for some reason the 7th grade teachers aren't. And so now we've got a very specific root cause that our 7th grade math teachers aren't engaging kids in instruction. And maybe extra help exists in other places, but it doesn't exist for math for 7th graders. So again, these specific root causes are specific to the SMART goal. When we look at that SMART goal, we want to say, okay, what is it about students and the way we're teaching in our community that's impacting that specific SMART goal? So very important that we understand that there's general root causes and there's specific root causes. If you do one or the other, you won't have your achievement go up as much as if you do both. Very important. Okay, then root causes tend to fall, from our experience and from our research, in 7 areas. Over the years, we award an award called our Top Gainer Award to schools that have big gains in student achievement. And almost all the time, the interventions that they put in place and the root causes that they identified fall within these 7 areas. We call these the elements of high achieving schools. And here they are. I'm just going to go through each one of them one at a time very quickly. We also have a document that you'll be able to download called Elements of High Achieving Schools, where you can read more about each of those areas. Okay, first one is high expectations. And so when we're looking at your school, when you're looking at your own school, as you're looking at your data and trying to come up with your root causes, here's questions that we would ask. Do educators, parents, community members, and students expect all students to succeed at a rigorous level? What we typically find is the answer to that is no. So if not, who has lower expectations? And which group of students do they have lower expectations for? I know in my own practice as a teacher years ago, not too many years ago, I did not have as high expectations for the troublemakers in my classroom as I did for the students who came in engaged, ready to go. I lowered my expectations for those troublemakers, and in doing so, I was doing those kids a real disservice. So it took me a couple years as a new teacher to realize that I really needed to have high expectations for all kids, including the troublemakers, including the mobile kids, including the kids who didn't come to school very much. You know, that I really had to make sure I had expectations, high expectations. Okay, second thing, are we expressing those expectations clearly and concretely to students? So are they clearly expressed? You know, if we were to say to a student, we have high expectations of you, and what does that mean? You know, but if we say, we expect you to earn a Core 40 diploma with academic honors, and we expect you to succeed, to earn a 3 or better in an AP class, that's our expectation for you. That's very concrete. Kids know what that means. Parents know what that means. So we want to make sure that our expectations are very clear. And then the third thing is, are those expectations purposefully communicated to every student in the building? Your free and reduced lunch kids, your paid lunch kids, each of your ethnic and racial groups. You know, is there a plan that somebody has said to every single student, this is our expectation of you? So as we're looking at high expectations, this is one of, we think, an area that's really key to raising student achievement. So something to think about as you're looking at your data. And I'll show you in a minute, you'll have a data report that's specific on expectations, so you can kind of see if you have high expectations in your building or not. Okay, next one is rigorous curriculum. On this one, we want to make sure that the entire curriculum has been aligned with world-class academic standards. And that it's not only aligned on paper, but it's also aligned in instruction and in assessment. So, and then are all students taught a rigorous curriculum? If not, why not? And this is another area in schools that we find that there are some student groups who never have a chance to even enroll in a rigorous curriculum. So, maybe we haven't encouraged them to do so. Maybe there's a prerequisite in place that we don't really need that's weeding some kids out of of a high rigor class. Maybe there's funding that's necessary, like in an AP class, students need funding to take the AP test, and we need to, be able to help kids learn how to obtain funding for that. And maybe the kids just have a fear of failing, that if they take hard classes, they're not going to do as well. So how do we address those things so that we get kids into the rigorous content? And just one elementary example, one of our elementary schools a couple years ago decided to put the entire student body on the high ability student or the gifted and talented curriculum, every single kid in the building. So they were thinking, why are we limiting our gifted and talented or high academic ability curriculum to just some kids? Let's give it to all kids, and let's give them the extra help they need to succeed in that level of coursework. So be thinking, who gets to enroll, who gets rigorous curriculum? And again, when you print out the curriculum reports and see all of your curriculum data, you'll be able to see, how that works in your school. And then the other thing is, do parents and students have real-time meaningful understanding of which standards have been mastered? And by real time, I'm meaning like a weekly, is there kind of a weekly report, or, somehow we're telling parents especially and kids, okay, you've mastered this one, but you haven't mastered that one yet. How are we communicating that? So, okay, that's curriculum. Instruction. When you look at your instruction data report, here are questions that we would be asking if we were in your shoes. Again, does your instruction align with world-class standards? I can't tell you how many schools we run across where there's an alignment on paper, but it's not actually happening in the classroom. So, is it happening in the classroom? And if not, then, what are you going to put in place to make sure it is? Does our instruction convey high expectations for all students? And again, using myself as an example, when I first started teaching, and I kind of did a little study on this after I've been teaching a couple of years. I called on the students who were not the behavior problem students much more often than I called on the behavior problem students that I didn't think might have the correct answer. So, and what does that convey to those students if I'm not calling on them? So, to me, it would convey that I didn't expect them to have a correct answer. So, how do we convey high expectations in our instruction? Does our instruction engage all students in learning? Are we paying attention to students' learning styles, their interest? Are we applying our academic content to things that would interest kids? What about kids that learn at a slower rate? They can learn the content, it's just going to take them longer. Do our instructional practices allow for that? So, and also, does our instruction enable the teachers to help students who struggle by reteaching content that the students haven't mastered, by identifying students who need extra help and extra time, and then providing that extra time for students or extra help in the classroom? So again, as we're looking at instructional practices and all that data that will help you look at that, these are some of the questions that we would ask. And then frequent classroom assessment, we think this is very important, and Tina, by the way, is a master in doing this. She was the first school that we were ever aware of that did frequent classroom assessment followed by extra help. So in our classroom assessments, our assessments align with standards, and are the assessments used by the teachers to help them identify instructional strategies that didn't work? In our opinion, classroom assessments are more for teacher feedback than student feedback. We want teachers to use assessments to identify, oh, that instructional strategy worked, I nailed it, all the kids learned that. Or, oh my gosh, look at this question, the kids all missed it, I better reteach that. And the next time I teach this, I better do it differently because I didn't get through. So also, are the teachers using the in-class assessments to identify students who need extra help and then providing that extra help for those kids in the classroom? So frequent classroom assessment aligned with standards used by the teacher to inform instructional decisions and to identify kids that need extra help. And then number 3, we're following the assessment with the extra help for kids. So again, when you look at your data, it's going to help you make some decisions about how well this is happening in your schools. And then this may be a place you decide you want to work on. Extra help, another one of the big ones, are students who need extra help, are they frequently identified? And then are they actively engaged in extra help? So, you know, are we figuring out which kids need the extra help and we're being proactive about it? In other words, we're not just offering tutoring and saying, oh, it's available if you want it, but we're saying, okay, Joe, you need this extra tutoring, and instead of going to activity period, we're going to bring you in so that you can get this extra help. You know, are we being proactive about it? Do all students have extra help inside the classroom and outside the classroom, with the emphasis on all? Another example, we've had several schools that have provided extra help outside of the classroom, and it happened after school. What we found is that the low-income students had to go home after school to babysit because their parents had 2 jobs and they couldn't attend after-school tutoring. So we want to make sure that the extra help is going to be available for all students. And do both low ability and high ability students have access to extra help and time? A lot of schools that we work with provide extra help for low ability or low achieving students, but they're not providing extra help for high achieving students. And you know, if we think about it, if we could offer an AP class or a very rigorous curriculum, the gifted and talented curriculum, and then provide a ton of extra help for our high achieving students, you know, that might make it easier for our high achieving school students to believe that they can master that content and to jump in and grab it. So, okay, that's extra help. Guidance. Um, so, 3 things that we think are incredibly important. First one is, do all students have an adult at school who's responsible for that student? So, and then there's some bullet points there. They care about the kids, they understand academic and career pathways, etc. The last bullet point I really want to focus on, and we think it's really important that that adult has no more than 30 students that they're responsible for, and we would love it if that ratio were 12 to 1 instead of 30 to 1. So some schools we have worked with will implement a teacher advisor program, where each teacher has 12, 15 kids that they are kind of like the parents at school. They're responsible for watching out for those kids. They can notice then with a ratio that low when those students are falling through the cracks or when something is off in their life or whatever. So if a teacher advisor program, the teachers would work very closely with the school counselors. And in most schools where we see this, the school counselors are kind of coordinating that program. So yeah, so that's number 1. And then number 2, very important for student motivation, do all students have a tentative career goal? Do they have a post-secondary education plan? Do they have a savings plan for post-secondary ed? Do they earn grades that align with their post-secondary ed goals? And do they talk with their parents a lot about their goals and plans? In other words, are your students, are you asking your students to engage in rigorous curriculum because the school said they should, or because DOE said they should? Or do those students understand that they're setting themselves up for their future when they enroll in and work hard in rigorous classes, that's going to impact their income, it's going to impact their job security, it's going to impact the types of jobs that they'll be able to apply for? You know, do they have a personal reason for wanting to do well at school so that they're motivated? And then finally, for students in grades 8 through 11, do they have a course plan, a high school course plan that aligns with their post-secondary ed goals? So in other words, if they're planning to go to Harvard, they better to study medicine, they better be enrolled in the Core 40 with Academic Honors Diploma and be taking a lot of science and math. So is everything aligned? Okay, that's guidance. And then finally, this is the 7th one, the learning environment. When you look at that data report, here's what we're thinking. Does the classroom environment support learning? I think if your school is typical, you'll be shocked at how many students say that the environment in the classroom is interfering with their ability to learn. So take a look at that data. Do parents support learning? Do the parents, when you look at the parent responses to the surveys, do parents hold high expectations? Do they talk with their children daily? Do they talk to their kids' teachers? And does the community support learning? We find that's really important too. We think it's really important for business in schools to have discussions about academic rigor so that businesses can help you understand how the level of rigor that's required for our students to be successful in a global economy. And they can also give you real-world applications for your academic content. So, you know, is the business community involved with your school? And are there things that just convey how important it is to the community that kids go to post-secondary, like scholarships and college visits and internships and all of that? So and when we're talking about learning environment, we're talking about not only the classroom environment, but also what parents are like and what the community is like. And once again, all the data that you get in these 7 different reports will help you really look at how your schools are doing in those areas. Okay, so let's look at the data. So first of all, when you come up with a root cause, it's going to sound something like, we are concerned that about, you know, poor attendance. But we want to have a data point to put behind that. So from our survey or any other data that you might have in your building or your community, you know, what can you put your finger on data-wise that backs up your statement that poor attendance is interfering with learning? If you're concerned about a lack of student discipline, what can you put your finger on that backs that up? In other words, we don't want your root causes to be based just on hunches. We want data to back that up so that we make sure that the hunch is correct. And if you can't back it up with data, then we want to really question that hunch and try to put that data behind it. So, okay, so root causes are supported by data. And again, I mentioned this before, but the schools that improve tend to spend a lot of time very carefully identifying both the general and specific SMART goal or root causes for each SMART goal. So we're going to look at one SMART goal at a time and figure out, okay, for this SMART goal, what's getting in the way? And then later we'll design interventions to address the root causes that you come up with. Okay, so when you look at the data, I like to feel like you're an investigator and you're looking at all that data and you're trying to figure out, you know, why aren't our students achieving at a high level? When you think about data, you're always looking for the stories in the data. So in this set of data, what stories can you find that would help you understand why kids aren't achieving at a higher level? So there are these 7 different data reports. They come from, the data in these reports come from a variety of sources. One is all the surveys that you gave, and if you're the root cause data person, bless your heart, we know how much work you did, and this is where you're going to see the value of all that work when these reports print out. So the survey data, parent survey, teacher survey, community survey, and student survey, all of that data will be on the reports, as well as the steering team. Again, your root cause data print person. The steering team answered some questions about things that, opportunities that were available to you in your school and some other stuff. And we've pulled those questions and sorted them into these 7 different reports. Okay, so I guess I just got ahead of myself. That is what that slide says. Okay, so here's what the report looks like. So the possible root cause is centered around the expectation to continue their education after high school. And you can see that we've listed, first of all, the student prompt, and then we show you how the question appeared on the parent survey, the community survey, and the teacher survey. And then we've divided the answers by agree, disagree, and not sure. Not sure does not, for us it's not an agree. So it's really agree and not agree, disagree and not sure. Okay, so, oops, So, and then we can see that the data is reported. So if I just look at the agree data, we can see, and this is a rural schools data, I can see that there were 846 students that took the survey. 704 agreed with the statement that they expected to continue their education after high school, and that was 83%. And if I look across at the parent data, this school surveyed 45 parents, and 100% of them said that they expected their kids to continue their education after high school. Only 62% of the community did, and only 61% of the teachers did. Matter of fact, we have, if I look at the raw data, there's 22 teachers in this building that do not believe that, do not expect students to continue their education after high school. And if I were in this school, that would concern me, because I'd be wondering, those 22 teachers, if they didn't expect kids to continue their education after high school, are they encouraging all students to take rigorous classes? Are they encouraging all students to enroll in Core 40 curriculum? In an elementary school, are they encouraging all students to be reading at grade level and putting in all the interventions and doing the work that they have to do to get all kids to the point where they could continue their education after high school? So these expectations, when folks don't have high expectations, then the question is, okay, so how does that impact what they're doing? And if I were in the school, that would concern me that only 61% of the teachers had high expectations. I'm also a little bit concerned that only that 17%, that I've got 35 kids that responded to the survey that don't think they're going to continue their education after high school, because I bet those kids aren't doing the work that they would need to do in order to have that option. So, okay, so that's how the data gets reported. Go on real quickly. And then here's how the short answer data gets reported. So this is also the expectations report. And what percentage of ninth graders are enrolled in Core 40 in the beginning of the freshman year. And then sophomore, junior, senior, we can see as that percentage goes down. Do we have prerequisites on the courses? So those expectation questions, the short answer questions also will appear on each of the reports. Okay, so when you're having your discussion in your building, here's how that's going to work. First of all, there's 2 steps to this process, and again, this is something that I want to make sure that you'll all understand. So I'm going to just go a little slower on this slide. First of all, step 1 is that you will come up with your root causes, and that's what we've been talking about. So for each SMART goal, what is interfering with that SMART goal? You'll look at those 7 different reports for each SMART goal, and then you'll come up with the product, which is your root causes. So you'll say, okay, for this SMART goal around mastering ratios, here's the root causes. Here's why we don't think kids are mastering ratios. 1 is a general root cause. Kids aren't coming to school. 2 is a specific root cause. We don't teach ratios. So we're looking at the root causes. Then, after you've got the root causes identified, then we want to see, is this a root cause for all students or just for some students? So let's look at a couple of examples. If the teachers aren't teaching ratios, of course that's going to be a root cause that impacts every kid. But let's think about attendance. Is it all kids that aren't coming to school, or is it just some groups of kids? So in your reports, we also give you the opportunity to drill down those reports. So in the summary report, you might have seen that only 82% of students are in attendance every day. But when I start to look at these drilled down reports, I discover that it's my males that aren't coming to school. And maybe even more specific, it's my male African American students that aren't coming to school. And so if we can drill down the root cause to see exactly which students it is, then when we get to the intervention step, we can further target that intervention. Just another quick example. In an elementary, several of the elementary schools that we worked with, they found that that males were achieving and reading at a higher level than the females. And when they looked at the root cause data, one of the things that they discovered is that the males did a lot less outside of school reading than females. And so the intervention then was to make sure that they were bringing males before the kids to be root causes, to be examples of readers, and they were making sure that they were providing the boys with a lot of reading options that would appeal to boys. So if we can narrow down that root cause, we can further target the intervention. So in looking at the products then, in the first take, we're just going to say, okay, attendance is a root cause. So we are concerned that students have poor attendance. In the second take, we're going to say, we are concerned that 6th grade boys have poor attendance. So we've narrowed down that root cause, and that will narrow down the intervention. And again, this is why we think our work is so successful in schools, because we have really worked to identify what the issue is, and then the interventions are strong and targeted. So, okay, moving right along. So here's what you'll do. Root cause identification. In the online system, you'll be able to download a help sheet that looks like this. And all of your school's SMART goals will already appear on the help sheet. So this will not be available until after your SMART goals have been approved. So the SMART goals will be here. Then, as you're pawing through the data, say you're looking through the data and you say, oh my gosh, our attendance is really needs to improve. So you would write, we are concerned about poor attendance. You would check off that that was a general root cause, and then you would put the evidence down here. Only 82% of our students are in the building every day. So, so let's look at how that would work. Oops, I think there's a slide coming up that has some examples, but let's say if it's a specific root cause, like maybe you've talked with the teachers, and in these discussions you realize that nobody's teaching ratios in 7th grade. So the root cause would be our teachers don't teach ratios, and then you'd look down here to see, okay, which of these root causes specifically does that, which of these SMART goals does that specifically address? So I'm not sure. Yeah, let's say nobody was teaching linear equations. You'd write that up here, and then you'd check that off here. Okay? Okay, so that's the help sheet. You'll do that first. And to get to the data, when you log in and open up the data, I'll show you how to do that in just a sec, you want to go to this report. So you can see here's the summary report. Here's all questions. I can also print separate reports for each of those 7 areas of high achieving schools. Okay, but I would just click this one report. So you're going to go in here, make sure this is 15-16 because that's when you did your survey. Make sure you're including all grades and groups. Make sure that yes, you want to include the root cause questions because you put them in there. And then we're going to click on this report, the summary report. Later, we'll be able to go down to the drill down reports to see the disaggregated data, but right now we just want to go to the summary report. Okay, so here's just a couple of examples. I already went over that one. My teachers keep my attention when they are reading. Again, when they are teaching. And again, this is a real school's data. Take a look at this data. Teachers, 85% of them say, yeah, we're keeping the kids' attention, and only 63% of the students say that. So a lot of times when you're looking at this root cause data, it just begs discussions. If I were in the school and I were a teacher there, I would be thinking, oh, I thought I was engaging. The kids are telling me I'm not engaging, and let's think about that. Let's talk about it. What interventions do I need to put in place so I can be more engaging? So, okay. Curriculum rigor. What percentage of your math courses align with state standards? Here's an example of one of those short answer questions. 100%. Good. So when you're filling out that help sheet, here's that slide. Low attendance, you would check, that's a general. No Algebra 1 extra help, that is going to be a specific. So that would apply just to the SMART goal for passing Algebra 1 ECA. Okay, so the discussion is then after you've poured through all the data and each person on your steering team has completed this help sheet, then we're going to come together and have a discussion. So for all SMART goals, first discussion is what general root causes are impacting everything. And so you would toss out things like, across the board discipline, attendance, those general root causes. And then one at a time, you would say, okay, for each SMART goal, what's getting in the way of that SMART goal? So the first SMART goal is for grades 3, 4, and 5. Free and reduced students, having them increasing the percentage who pass English, I-STEP, and English and Language Arts I-STEP. So what's getting in the way of that? And that would be this discussion. And then you'd go to the next one, grades 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, all students earning a 90% monthly reading vocab quiz. That's the SMART goal. What's getting in the way of that? And then that would be this discussion. Okay, so we're going to do one SMART goal at a time. Then you'll also be able to download this, we call it an Instagraph, and it's a way to come to consensus with a group really quickly. So there'll be one of these for all SMART goals, there will be one of these for all goals, and then one of these for each specific SMART goal. So let's say I'm doing the one for all goals. No, let's do the ones for specific. So I'm going to check here that this is going to be an Instagraph for a specific SMART goal, and it's the one all 11th grade students passing Algebra 1 ECA. So as I'm having the discussion, the first person that talks says, Algebra 1 is not aligned with standards. That might be a problem. So we write that down. The second person says, there's no in-class extra help for Algebra 1. We write it down. Third person says, no outside of class help for Algebra 1. No frequent assessments for Algebra 1. So every time someone brings something up, we write it down on this Instagraph. Then, when all the ideas are up there, what you do is you take the number of choices, so there's 6, and you divide it by 3. So 6 divided by 3, everybody's going to get 2 votes on its Instagraph. If there had been 12 things listed here, everybody would get 4 votes. So you always divide by 3. You say to everybody, okay, in this case, everybody gets 2 votes. Vote for the 2 things that you think are most interfering with kids being able to pass Algebra 1. So the first person comes up to the Instagraph, and they vote for their 2. Second person comes up, and they vote for their 2, but they put their vote on top of this person's vote, and then nobody had voted for this, so that's the first one there. Third person comes up, fourth person comes up, and you can see what we're doing is creating a bar graph. So you can say then to folks, okay, it looks like having algebra not aligned with standards is probably the biggest problem. Do we have consensus that, yeah, let's make sure that our interventions are going to tackle that? Yes. Then let's also take a look at no outside of class extra help. Do we have time and energy to do this too? And then that's a discussion. Nobody voted for these 2, so let's not worry about those. Maybe take a look at these 2. But we know that everybody felt very strongly about alignment with standards. So this Instagraph will help target your discussion. We know that we don't have to talk about the first one. We know we don't have to talk about the last 2. And really, probably the discussion would only be about this that got 2 votes. So, okay. So then in root cause targeting, I already showed you that here's all the drill down reports. So for each root cause, so after the root causes are identified, for each root cause, then we're going to look at, does that root cause apply to all students, or does it apply to some students more than others? And if so, should we target the root cause? And in other words, we're going to say that we are concerned that 6th grade boys have poor attendance. Then when we get to interventions, we're not working on attendance for everybody. We're just focusing on those 6th grade boys and making sure that they get to school. Okay, So for online documentation, that's kind of it on root causes, the parts of the discussions. For your documentation, I wanted to show you this screen. Right now, for those of you who do not have your SMART goals approved, when you go in to look at your root cause section, it's going to look like this and nothing's going to be linked, nothing's hot. And just as a reminder, that's because you have to have SMART goals approved before you can go on to root causes, because the root cause discussion centers on the SMART goals. So we've made it impossible for you to go on until you've got this step finished. And again, if you don't have that step finished, I mean ASAP, that needs to get done so you can meet DOE's October 1st deadline. Okay, so I'll go to the online system real quickly, and I see it's 5:30, so we're right at time. I'm just going to keep you a couple minutes over. So I'm on the Vision Action Process page. I'm going to scroll down to this month's, this time's step, root causes. The webinar that we're recording right now will be here for you to download and watch. This is just another place where you can download your SMART goals and see a report that lists them all in one place. It's from the step above. Then we want to review the root cause summary reports. So when I click on this report, that page is going to come up, and then I'm just going to come down here to all questions summary. Make sure that your year is on 15-16. Okay, so I've got that, so I can look at the reports. This link right here goes to that help sheet. Then we're going to discuss the root causes. This will open up the Instagram. Discuss the specific root causes. This also opens up the Instagram. And then you're going to discuss targeting the root causes. That takes you back to the data page where you can start to look at the drill down reports. Now, you're probably thinking, oh my gosh, that's a ton of reports. What I would suggest that you do here is to ask people, would they like to volunteer to look at one of these reports? So let's say that you have somebody on your steering team who's really interested in low-income kids. They might say, yeah, I'd really like to look at the lunch program status report because I'd like to see, are there root cause gaps between paid lunch and free and reduced lunch kids? If you have someone who's a big advocate for male achievement, they might want to volunteer to look at the gender report to see are there gaps in those areas. So I would not suggest to everybody that they read all of these reports. I divvy them up and just trust that everybody can look at everything and bring ideas to the table. So okay, that'll make that a little faster for you. Okay, so we're targeting the root causes, and then we're entering the root causes. That is really easy. Oops, why did that happen? Entering, I guess I timed out. Okay. There we go. So I've already got a couple of root causes in here. Yeah, I have one in that we just put as test. That we did that a couple days ago. So I'm going to add a root cause, and notice they start with the prompt. We are concerned that students do not have access to extra help for math. Okay, evidence for the root cause is that it might be a couple of things. Teachers report that tutoring is not available for math. And then also the SI2 survey shows that 84% or 74% of students do not believe that tutoring is available in the school. Okay, Does this root cause affect some students more than others? And let's say when you did the drill down, you found out that paid lunch students were much more aware of tutoring than your free and reduced. So we're going to say yes. That brings up all the demographics, and we can look at paid lunch, or not paid lunch, free and reduced. Then which SMART goal does this impact? So we're looking at this, and we're going to say, let me make this a little smaller here. That this is going to impact the percentage of students who solve absolute value linear equations. So I click that. Oops, I gotta unclick that one first, and then click that, and then save. So that's how easy it is to put in a root cause. And you can see now here's the root cause. So here's the SMART goal, and then the root causes will appear underneath the SMART goal. Okay, so that's that. That's how to get them into the system. And then going back to SMART goals, remember that you have to open Council Discussion 4, same way you did it last month, and then in entering Council Discussion 4, on here, what we're looking for this month is we would like to know who participated in the discussion, what level of engagement was there, and what did you observe that makes you think that, and list several key points made during the discussion and who made those points. Okay, that will give us some feedback so we can kind of know how the engagement level is in your building. And then you're going to submit the root causes, but before you do that, make sure you read the rubric. Let's just go over that real quickly, and then that will be it. So root causes, a significant number of root causes are specific in nature. Root causes associated with each SMART goal hold high promise for impacting the associated SMART goal if the root causes are successfully addressed. The root causes clearly states the situation or practice that interferes with the individual SMART goals. At least one root cause addresses curriculum content, instructional practices, classroom assessment, and extra help, extra time. Those are the four biggies that we know that when schools improve, those are the things that they've tackled. And then root cause data provide evidence that the root cause exists in the school or the community. Okay, so that's what Tina is going to be looking at. The big one is the second one. The root causes hold high promise for impacting the SMART goal. If she does not think that's the case, she'll be on the phone, because why have a school improvement plan if it's not going to impact the SMART goals? So there's a way to separate this discussion. Let's go back to the slides, into smaller discussions if you'd like. So let's look at the tasks. So here's the tasks in this section. There's 4 of them. The first thing is the data analysis, and so here's the steps. Listen to the root cause intro that we're doing now, review the summary reports, complete the root cause help sheet. This is individual work. Second one is to identify the root causes, and here's the steps to do it. Third one is to target student groups if there is a root cause gap. And then the third one is to document, or the fourth one is to document everything online. So as you're looking at getting these tasks complete, one of the things we wanted to suggest is that you could separate this in this way. You could ask people, do part A before you get to the meeting. Everybody get online, look at that root cause data, and complete the root cause help sheet before you get to the meeting. Okay, then you get to the meeting, and let's say you only have an hour for the meeting. Then in that hour, I would do this one discussion. Let's discuss the root causes for each of our SMART goals and talk about what's getting in the way. And then reconvene and look at, okay, now let's look at the drill down data. Are there student groups that are more impacted by these root causes than others? And then finally, getting everything documented online. So, yeah, so I think that's it. If you have a lot of time for meeting, like if you're just going to, get together and, crunch it all out, and you've got 2.5 hours or whatever, you could theoretically do this all together. We have a lot of schools that would do like little mini retreats, and they'll just get it all done. But if you need to chunk it up, think about how you might chunk it up to get the tasks finished. Finally, remember that this is probably the most important step, is identifying the best root causes. Okay, don't forget that Tina is there to help you. This is a really good time to maybe do some preliminary thinking and then call Tina and say, hey, can I schedule an hour with you and let me go over our thinking with you and see if you have anything to add? Or if you need help just looking at the data, this would be fine also for you to call Tina and say, hey, could I schedule an hour of your time where you would just, paw through our data and see what jumps out at you? And she would, be happy to do that. This is an area where Tina excels at. It's why her school was our top gainer school more years than any other SI2 school. And we're just thrilled to have her here as a resource for you. So please, please use her. Okay, I know I'm over. I'm sorry. There's just a lot to cover in this. And Tina, any questions before we close?
There was one question, and sorry for my voice. I am surrounded by corn. It's beginning to affect us here. Kyle Kaufman had a question about where the data review help sheet was. And Kyle, I don't know if you're talking about the root cause help sheet. Can we unmute him to find that out?
Sure. We can. And these? Oops. Maybe I can. My control panel does not want to cooperate. I can't. Can you, Tina? My control panel's not staying open. Let's just
There we go.
Okay.
Kyle, was it the root cause help sheet? Is that what you're talking about?
The root cause data review help sheet, yes. That's on slide 53.
Okay.
Right. If you go to the manual button.
Here, I'll just do it.
Okay, on the VTA process.
There's a couple places you can go. One is, let me scroll down here. Good question, by the way. I appreciate that. When we're reviewing the root cause summary reports, this tool right here is the help sheet. So when you're getting ready to review the reports, this tool. And then Tina started to go to the other place that all this is available is on the manual page. And if I scroll down to root causes, the root cause help sheet is there as well. So you can access it 2 different ways.
Beautiful.
Okay. Other questions? That was a great question. I know we go through this so fast, and again, that's why, Tina's here, and tomorrow, if this is all fuzzy, just call her and say, what's my first step? That's fine. And we know that, I wish we could provide everyone with more time to get this work done, but with the October 1st deadline, that's, we're just going to have to really dig in, and everybody's going to have to scramble. So any other questions, Tina, or from anyone?
No, but I wanted to let Angie know you are first on my radar, either yet this evening or tomorrow morning.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, sounds good, and I apologize for being over. Just a lot of content to cover this time. And again, remember, the most important step, please dig into that data and find those stories that will help you improve your school. So thanks, everyone. Have a great start of school, and we'll talk to you at the end of the month. Thanks.